What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the E! Network, as today we're talking Season 9, Episode 4 of Total Divas, called Damage Control. If you haven't already checked them out, check out all my other reviews of every episode of Season 9 so far of Total Divas, including Season 7 and 8 and Season 1 here on Network and Chill on the channel. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Another interesting edition of the show with more drama galore. What else is new? Ronda Rousey talks about finally getting the freedom to be a heel. This was around the time that she had turned heel on Raw as the Raw Women's Champion, going off on Becky Lynch, going off on Charlotte Flair, in that promo that some people said was scripted, a lot of people said was forced, some people praised because it really let her kind of go off the handle for a change. It was a really good promo, but in said promo, she talked about how she was above and beyond all the other women in that women's division. It was because of her that that division was getting the attention it was. And A, she's not wrong. B, it was clearly a heel promo. I guess not just fans, but a lot of the women backstage, specifically Nia Jax, took that personally. So Nia Jax has been a bit of a drama starter here on the Season 9, on the 9th season of Total Divas. She was offended by her comments, so Nia Jax confronted Ronda Rousey backstage afterward. She said, listen, that's not cool, and she did it in kind of a passive-aggressive way, in the same way that Carmella, where she took the adult approach. Carmella went up to Nia Jax on the first episode of the season and said, hey, I heard you have some beef with me. And Nia's like, yeah, you know, I just don't like you, you're not genuine. She kind of took the bitch approach there, which I'm sure they're just playing it up for the show. But at least Carmella in that situation addressed Nia Jax like an adult. She, took the nice approach, like, hey, I heard some things, what's going on with this? Ronda Rousey just gets blindsided out of nowhere by Nia Jax, who comes storming up to her backstage. And Ronda Rousey kind of takes this personally because she sees Nia Jax as a friend. They've worked a lot together over the course of 2018, early 2019. They have a lot of history together, and Ronda admits that she has really enjoyed working with Nia. So for Nia to say something to Ronda about her comments on the show really took Ronda off guard. Meanwhile, Trinity invites the Ikonics to her Pensacola home, not where she lives, but some home that she picks out, some like temporary place where they can all crash for a night, because she feels the Ikonics, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, are very homesick, and she wants to make them feel at home. And she also wants to pick up the slack from what the Bellas kind of left behind. The Bellas on this show many, many times threw a lot of girls trips, and Trinity, because the Bellas aren't really around anymore, wants to pick up the slack for them. She talks to her husband, Jimmy Uso, John, about it. John does not approve. John's like, that just sounds stupid. Do they really want to go away to a different home? It's not like you're taking them back to Australia. You're just bringing them to a different part of Florida where they already live in Orlando. It doesn't really make much sense. And then Trinity, I think it said, well, you better get over it because you're paying for it, or something along those lines, which I'm like, okay, that was a little weird. But anyway, Ronda brings her issues to her husband, Travis Brown. She talks to Travis about, like, listen, Nia came up to me. She's not upset about it. She just kind of feels not offended. She's not pissed, but she's upset in the way where, like, I can't believe I pissed off the other women. I wasn't really intending to do that. Especially coming off the Sonya thing in the last episode where she called Sonya, oh, she's a fake MMA fighter, which is true. And then Sonya got all offended, like, get over it. Travis implores Ronda to think bigger picture. Don't think about how you're offending these women. It's really a matter of how they're perceiving what you're saying and not really what you're saying. So don't really think about it like that. You're not really doing anything wrong in this situation. Meanwhile, another side story on this episode sees Carmella join her husband, not her husband, maybe eventually, but her current boyfriend, Corey Graves, who we found out were in a relationship earlier on in the season, at his home in Danbury. It's the first time that she's ever gone to his new place in Connecticut. And I've been to Danbury many, many times. I didn't recognize any of the places that they've been to. I was hoping, I'm like, oh yeah, I would see a shot of something I was familiar with, but Danbury's not exactly close to me. It's like over an hour away. The only time I've been to Danbury, at least as far as I can recall, is for wrestling shows for Northeast Wrestling, which would explain why Corey Graves has appeared at every NEW show in Danbury over the last few years, because he lives there now. I'm sure he lived in Connecticut, elsewhere in Connecticut, before he moved to this new apartment in Danbury. But anyway, She talks about how she doesn't want to go out, but he does. He wants to kind of show her around where he lives, kind of get a feel for what he does on a daily basis and go out and do fun things. She doesn't want to go out, but not because she's lazy, but because she doesn't want to be called out on being a homewrecker, which she's not, but there's still a lot of bad blood permeating there from that whole controversy a couple episodes ago. So she wants to just stay in and order food, which is exactly what they do. Meanwhile, Rhonda and Travis contemplate getting into the apparel industry. Apparently that's something that Rhonda really is passionate about. She notices that there's a lot of like gear and stuff like that that's not really fit for all women, maybe just one body type and that's it, and she doesn't really appreciate that. So she contemplates getting into the apparel industry. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Trinity and Liv Morgan decorate the apartment for the Ikonics' arrival. They show up and they're very blown away. They're very appreciative that Trinity and Liv made the effort to make them feel more at home, but pointed out that the flags that they hung up all over the apartment were from the United Kingdom. They're the English flag, the British flag. They're not the Australian flag, which may look similar. I don't remember, but they're like, oh shit, we're already off to a subpar start here. Anyway, so Corey does end up taking Carmella out to one of his favorite chocolate shops in the area. He ends up convincing her, like, listen, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. She ends up going along with it. They go to a chocolate shop. They really enjoy themselves. They pick up some really cute chocolate, enjoy it. And while they're on their way out, we hear some random woman off screen. The camera tries to pick up on where this woman is. It very well may have been a plant just to make the episode more dramatic. I feel like it's very random for some lady just to recognize Corey and Carmella out of nowhere and yell out of their car or some woman on the street. Carmella did say, she had a camera in her hand and she was filming us, calling me a homewrecker. We didn't see the woman, and again, I feel like it might have been a plant just to add more drama to the story of this part of the episode. So we have no idea because we didn't end up seeing the person. But either way, real or fake, she ends up getting really offended over this and just kind of wants to go home, crawl up in a ball, and never go out again. She feels really bad about the whole thing. So anyway, we come to find out the Ikonics don't drink. So Trinity and I don't know if Sonya's there. Trinity, Liv, and I think Nia ends up showing up, and they're like, oh, interesting. You don't drink. Like, that's kind of a big thing right there because they can't really party if they don't drink. Nia reveals to the rest of the girls there that she went off on Ronda Rousey, and the rest of them were like, yeah, that's not exactly a good idea. They're like, holy shit, why would you do that? That seems kind of stupid. And even Trinity's like, I know Nia, something's definitely going on here, because otherwise, why would she be doing that? Corey, they end up getting over the whole homewrecker thing. Corey ends up taking Carmella out to a dance class, a private dance lesson in the area. But some woman comes up to him and is like, hey, can we feature you in the newspaper? And they're like, not really. This is supposed to be a private lesson. I'm not really sure why you're here. And they refuse to be in the paper because they don't want to get more attention on them coming off the whole controversy from a few weeks earlier when they came out about being in a relationship. So they turn that woman down. Carmella still feels weird about that whole thing. Rhonda tries out the apparel that she was talking about and gets more of a feel for whether she wants to do it or not. She does it with Travis Brown. Not it, but you know what I'm saying. They go to the apparel appointment together. Get your fucking mind out of the gutters, people. Anyway, so the girls go out to party, but the Ikonics refuse to do it because they refuse to drink. They're not really big at drinking. They're not really big party people. So they're not really enjoying themselves, and Trinity takes a note of that, like, maybe that's not, maybe this isn't really for them. So they go back to the apartment. The Ikonics are like, we're just going to go back home and go to bed. We're kind of tired. But the girls, they don't really care. They just go out and party. Instead of going along with what Peyton and Billy want to do, which is what this whole thing was for in the first place, they just continue to party. I thought that was a little weird. Meanwhile, while on the party bus, Nia continues to complain about Ronda Rousey and stands by what she said. Like, she's a fucking blah, blah, blah. She's taking liberties with us, and she thinks that she's above us. And all the other girls are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just shut the fuck up. And it's just so annoying. So the Ikonics, when Trinity gets back to the apartment, they admit to her, like, listen, we're just overwhelmed. We're going to go back to Orlando. We appreciate the effort. We appreciate the hospitality. But this isn't really for us. We're going to go home. Meanwhile, Rhonda wants to show that, she meant differently by what she said. That by what she said in the promo, she meant to say that she's the mountain that other women are going to climb. That by beating her, it's going to mean something. and that by beating her, they're going to be even more legitimate than they already are. That's what she meant by her promo, and she wants to show the women that. She wants to prove that to them, that she's not there to, steal the spotlight away from them or to, go over everybody, which she did as she should have. But with Ronda Rousey, the whole reason why they booked her the way that they did was so it would mean something when someone eventually beat her, which was what Becky Lynch ended up doing at WrestleMania later that year, later that month. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, things cool down after the crazy night they had the night before, until they find out that Liv Morgan invited a bunch of random guys from the bar that night over to Trinity's place, and Trinity's not happy about this. Because she's like, this is my apartment. Even Sonya, I think Sonya was there too. If it's not Sonya, it was definitely, I know Charlie Caruso was there. Someone else had said, it might have been Sonya. I don't think Sonya was on this episode. It was somebody else who had said, listen, this is Trinity's place, or maybe Nia had said that. This is Trinity's place. You probably shouldn't have done that without getting her permission first. So Trinity gets pissed because everything's falling apart. People are breaking shit. Alcohol is spilling everywhere, all over this apartment. Nia ends up breaking a vase and to show Trinity, like, listen, you got to chill out. Shit's going to happen. It's all a part of the girls' trip. It's all part of the girls' trip. Breaking stuff, having a fun time, making a mess, blah, 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 even though it's not their house. And Trinity, despite being the more mature person in the situation, ends up going along with it. The whole lesson here, apparently, is that this type of shit happens on girls' trips. And again, maybe I'm biased because I don't drink, but I thought that was the dumbest lesson to be sent, the dumbest lesson to be learned, to be telling your audience, your viewing audience, that, this type of shit just comes with the territory whenever you party. You just kind of got to let loose, which I agree with, but not in this sense, where alcohol is getting everywhere and you're breaking stuff that doesn't belong to you. That makes absolutely no sense. I thought that was just stupid. Anyway, so Corey ends up making it up to Carmella, who was still feeling really bad about the entire day. Despite having fun at the chocolate shop and at the dance lesson, he ends up bringing her to a romantic dinner all by themselves. And they talk about how they're just happy to be happy, and Corey says that he's very happy and appreciative of Carmella for sticking by him throughout this entire bullshit that really kind of stemmed from him getting the divorce in the first place. And Carmella said, listen, I'm tired of not being able to show you off. I'm tired of kind of hiding away from people. I'll just get over it. I'll just deal with it, whatever. And she said that I'm over letting the comments from other people get to me because it doesn't matter. Who cares? So they move on from that. They walk out of the restaurant together as opposed to separately so they can avoid attention, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Nia ends up apologizing to Ronda backstage before Raw one of these days, saying, I'm sorry, I was heated, I didn't mean it. And yeah, she admitted as such that she was heated, and they make up and everything's fine and they're back to being friends. And that closes out this episode of Total Divas, Damage Control. So the Ronda Nia stuff, I'm glad that Nia ended up apologizing, but the whole thing with the women or the girls trip, with like, this type of shit happens all the time. Let's just break stuff. And, this wasn't about the Ikonics the entire time. This was all about us and just getting fucking drunk. I thought was so stupid. Was so dumb. So that part of the episode pissed me off. But all the other stuff with Carmella and Corey and Ronda and even the Nia stuff was fine. But overall, a decent episode of Total Divas. Check it out now on the E! Network. New review coming for episode 5, airing next week on the E! Network. You can check out the review here on Network and Chill, probably next Friday. Until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. Until then, though, be sure to subscribe here to the channel, like this video, drop a comment, and share the video. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be back next week with another all-new review of Total Divas. And tomorrow, I might have a SmackDown review up. For the first time in a few weeks on the channel, we're reviewing Friday Night SmackDown. If anything notable happens, that is. Because I feel bad not being able to talk about SmackDown on Wrestle Rant Radio because the show airs a day after I put up the podcast. So hopefully I can get to that tomorrow. If not, other content will be up here on the channel at some point. Until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. And I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.